right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Devin Hogan. I have had the pleasure to serve as your Minneapolis DFL chair since the year 2018. And I am, as a person who's voted Democratic their entire life, a farmer who runs a cooperative market garden on Nicollet Avenue, and a laborer who serves as the parliamentarian of my union's local, I'm very proud to call myself a DFLer. Also during this Pride Month, I'm super proud to be out as a queer and non-binary person. Representation matters, and I see you. As your party chair, I've helped to spearhead this effort to reinvent the caucuses from scratch and put them on the internet this year due to COVID. And I'd like to say that we've more than doubled our caucus turnout from 2017. And to my knowledge, 2021 has been the best attended caucus in decades, with the notable exception of 2016. I do want to give a special kudos and thanks to the members of the Minneapolis DFL Central Committee and the 60 participating campaigns in this year's endorsement process citywide for spending a lot of time together since last October to help make everything happen. Also want to give a special shout out to our ward committees who are putting on these events today. Our ward committee chair was unable to attend, so myself and my colleague Zainab Mohammed will help to run this event. The purpose of these events is for you, the delegates and people of Minneapolis, to get to know the candidates better and to give the candidates an opportunity to have more time to explain why they're asking for your support. We sent a form out for delegates to submit questions, and these questions will be used for the candidate forum at the beginning part of this event, followed by 5-minute candidate speeches. So endorsement is my favorite part of all the work we do. It's Democrats agreeing that this person is the person who supports our values the most as a Democrat. In a big tent, there is always going to be disagreements, but endorsement emphasizes coming together. And I think that's a pretty cool thing and something that we should celebrate. Now, my second favorite part of today is I get to flex on how your ward has influenced my life in Minneapolis and how it's meaningful to me. And so for Ward 2, Ward 2 is the reason why I'm in Minnesota. I went to the University of Minnesota for graduate school. And like a lot of people, I never left. And so I think that's a really important story to tell. It's a story that I don't think we tell enough here in Minnesota, but the U of M is an extremely important institution that is the reason why a lot of us are here and start families here and so on and so forth. I will say too, in Ward 2 is one of my most favorite establishments ever is Shin's. I'm a big fan of karaoke in general, and especially karaoke rooms. So now I go on to the contractually obligated parts to pass the hats. So Minneapolis DFL is 100% volunteer run, and we are sustained on small dollar donations from people in Minneapolis. Right now, our average donation is around $22, $23, and every little bit helps us do the work. You can donate any amount at www.minneapolisdfl.org/donate. That's minneapolisdfl.org/donate. And if you haven't given to a candidate or political party this year, you can get up to $50 of your donation refunded via the Minnesota Political Contribution Refund Program. Now, finally, to close out my speech, I want to explain how the ballots work and ranked choice voting works this year. So ranked choice voting is the same citywide in Minneapolis, where we only rank until there's 2 candidates and no endorsement left on the ballot. So as a Ward 2 candidate, or as a Ward 2 delegates, you've seen 2 candidates and no endorsement are the only options on your ballot. So therefore, based on the way our citywide rules work, you will essentially only get 1 vote in this particular ward. So your first choice is going to be the choice that counts in this particular vote for this ward. And also just finally, a reminder that you can vote as many times as you want on your ballot, and Minneapolis DFL will only record your most recent final submitted vote. So on that, I'm going to pass along to my colleague, Zainab Mohammed. She is going to help us ask the questions here. What we're going to do is switch between each of the candidates, ask them both the same question, and they'll each have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and we'll switch between the two. So off to you, Zainab.
Okay, and just for clarity, because I did jump on this a little late, we're asking the questions first, right, before the speeches? Okay,
yep.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Zainab. It's nice to be here with all of you. I do not live in Ward 2, but I love Ward 2, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Our first question is, will you abide by the DFL endorsement? And Tom Anderson, you're going to be the first one to answer it. I will also put all the questions on the chat.
Great. Well, first, I just want to thank you for putting this on, and also thank you for trying to completely redo a caucus and convention process in the middle of the pandemic. As a member of the SD63 DFL, it was my job to organize caucuses and conventions in a regular year. It's super hard. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of volunteer hours, and most people don't realize that everything that's done in caucus and convention is done with volunteers. So first, I want to thank you for that. My plan all along was to abide by the DFL endorsement, but based on what I've seen regarding significant irregularities in the process, I want to make sure that the DFL has fully looked into the issues that campaigns across the city have cited, from southwest to north to northeast, and just given a full report on the issues. I'm a DFLer. I've proven my worth through the DFL, but there's a lot of questions to answer, and I'm confident that the Minneapolis DFL will answer them fully. And if they do, then I will certainly abide by the DFL endorsement.
You, sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Devin and Zainab for being here, and everyone else who's on this feed. My answer is yes, I will abide by the DFL endorsement. And I want to thank you guys, and I appreciate the work that you guys have put into this. It wasn't easy, but nonetheless, I want to thank all the volunteers at the DFL who took their time and put the effort and time into this. And the delegates who partook in this really difficult, unprecedented endorsement process.
And you will abide by it?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And then the second question is gonna actually go to user, so right back to you. What is the current council person doing or not doing around public safety that prompted you to run? You're mute.
You would think I would get used to this. No. Thank you. That's a good question. I want to start off by saying Cam Gordon is a dedicated public servant with a deep commitment to our ward and our city, and something I know firsthand, both living in his ward as a constituent and working with him at City Hall as a policy aide. And what I want to say right now is he's 16 years on council. Ken has been directly responsible for the vision and leadership behind some of the things that Minneapolis is best known for, and that in our zero waste, he was a champion for our zero waste policy, our urban agriculture programs, our nation leading energy partnership and tobacco sales restriction. But right now, however, our city is experiencing some of the most dire and complex challenges ever, especially for our most vulnerable residents and communities, with COVID-19 exacerbating the issues in homelessness, affordable housing, income inequality, education disparities. The murder of George Floyd and the trial of Derek Chauvin have layered trauma on over-policed communities of color, last spring's civil unrest, devastated BIPOC businesses and neighborhoods that were already struggling due to COVID. While these events are sad and sudden and unplanned, the road we traveled to get here stretched across decades of policy institutions that have systematically prioritized the voices of those in our communities, the voices and needs of our affluent and white communities, while excluding and marginalizing those of our communities of color and other vulnerable communities. And my decision to run was prompted by my belief that I have the vision and leadership that we need now to produce the things that we hope Minneapolis will be known for and proud of in the days, years, and decades ahead. And that nothing to, oh, is it time?
Thank you, Yusra. We are at time, so
Right, no
appreciate it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On to you, Tom.
Great, thank you. I'll just start by saying, Cam has been in office for, I think, 15 years. It'll be 16 coming up. And I currently, do not plan on running a negative campaign against Cam. We have enough negativity. I've talked to a lot of my neighbors in my time in the community service, Longfellow Community Council, the work that I'll outline for you later. And since I've announced my candidacy, I've heard from folks across Ward 2 is that they respect the work that Cam has done. But they're open to finding someone new. someone who's responsive, who's willing to listen to the community, and who's able to bring people together to solve our problems. So we're going to run a campaign based on who I am as a leader and a person. We're going to knock on doors, we're going to make calls, and at the end, I'm confident our neighbors in Ward 2 will make decisions to elect new leadership here in Ward 2. Since we're pushing, for us to be specific on differences, I would just say that, Cam was quoted as saying in the Star Tribune that he thinks that we should let the people decide first, and then the council should start doing the work. I think a year after the murder of George Floyd, the council has failed to come up with a comprehensive plan and do the work to actually form a newer, better system for how we do public safety. And similarly with rent control, we don't have a rent stabilization policy that we can even point to and try to figure out if it's going to work or not. So to me, I think it's just backwards. I think the council needs to work together, roll up their sleeves and get to work to create real plans to produce so that our neighbors can figure out, whether they support these plans or not. And so it's more a difference of approach than anything. But Cam's a good person and has been a leader in our community. And so, like I said, I'm going to stay positive and talk about what our campaign is going to bring to Ward 2.
Thank you, Tom. And then the question is actually right back to you. The third question: what is your least and most favorite thing about Minneapolis in Ward 2?
Yeah. Okay, there was just some background noise there. So least favorite thing, there's a lot to say that I like about the city. There are a lot of things that we need to work on. The educational opportunity gap in our city is atrocious. As a former teacher, as an education advocate, as someone who currently still works on an equity advisory committee for Minneapolis Public Schools, our educational opportunity gap only perpetuates a cycle of poverty. It's unacceptable, and our Minneapolis City Council needs to address that. Our City Council isn't directly responsible for our schools, but we do need to work with Minneapolis Public Schools to find ways that we can support our kids. They're the future of our city. They need to be prioritized. So that's my least favorite thing, but I'm confident that we can move forward and work on that together. So that favorite thing, East Lake Street for sure. It's my toddler's favorite place to be. Remy's 3, and he loves East Lake Street even more than our amazing parks, which is wild to me. He always asks me, will you go on a walk with me, Dada? And I always know where we'll end up. We're going to end up on Lake Street watching the trucks and motorcycles. And even though I want to walk, he just wants to sit outside of Longfellow Market on the grass and watch the cars go by. So, but also the business, obviously for us, the business is up and down East Lake Street. For us, we live just a block off East Lake Street. So, that's my favorite part about Minneapolis and specifically Ward 2.
My turn?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about Minneapolis and Minnesota in general is the fact that it's home, and the fact that it accepted my family and my community, and we have a sense of belonging here more than any other place in America, to be quite honest. And my least favorite, other than the disparities that exist for BIPOC communities across the board in every level, is the weather, honestly. When it's winter, I contemplate, should I really stay in this place? And then comes summer and you're like, you know what? You forget all about it. And it's back to that cycle again. So yeah, that's my answer.
The weather is the most toxic thing about Minnesota. Our next question is going to be for you. You're going to be the first to answer. How will you support the economic recovery in the areas that were devastated by the riots in the spring of 2020, with an emphasis on small businesses? What measures can be taken to ensure that Lake Street remains a viable locale for minority-owned businesses?
Yeah, thank you. Small businesses are the backbone of our communities. They provide opportunities for creativity, entrepreneurship, employment opportunities for our neighbors, and gathering places for our residents. And as the daughter of a small business owner, I understand the importance of fostering a climate of that encourages and supports small businesses. And that is why I am supporting, and I'll be supporting and expanding small businesses in one of expanding and supporting small businesses is one of my top policy priorities. And we can do that by providing more and more equitable funding opportunities and resources, providing technical and financial assistance to support businesses impacted by COVID-19 and the civil unrest, and ensuring that the city contracts with diverse local and small businesses whenever possible, and expanding commercial property ownership opportunities, especially for BIPOC communities and residents in our city, enhancing cultural and language competency on the city's small business support team. And also that would help minorities and communities of color navigate the bureaucracy at City Hall. It's one of the things that I saw firsthand as a policy aide. And lastly, enhancing and expanding avenues for non-traditional lending. I think that would go a long way in helping businesses owned by BIPOC communities and communities in general build back stronger and more sustainable, so they can stay in Lake Street for decades to come.
Tom?
Great, thank you. Absolutely, we need to incentivize small businesses on East Lake Street. Like I said, I live less than a block off East Lake Street. I know how critical those small businesses are. We frequent them often. I talk to people up and down East Lake Street, owners of those businesses frequently, and people who work at those businesses, and they're critical to our community. I grew up, just like Yusra, I have my father and his brother owned a small grocery store in the small town where I grew up. I was mopping floors, packing groceries, cleaning the bathroom, taking out the cardboard and carrying out groceries, doing all the things that, a 12-year-old does at a grocery store, I guess. And I recently asked my dad, why do you spend so much time, or why did you spend so much time running that grocery store? Because it was a lot of work. And I saw firsthand how hard it was to keep that going. And he answered that, we didn't wake up in the morning trying to figure out how we could make piles of money. We woke up trying to figure out how we could help the community, direct quote from him. And I was like, wow, Dad, that's deep. Because I hadn't really checked in with him about that in quite a while. And that's really guided me, that sense of, business as community. They're not separate from the community, they're a part of the community. And it's important that we provide capital assistance to small businesses. And in the long run, obviously making sure that those businesses have customers, that they have neighbors who have living wage jobs, stable houses, and can participate in the local economy. This, like many other issues, is intersectional and will require, immediate and long-term solutions. I've also spoke to multiple small business owners on East Lake Street who told me that our current council member has been absent and hasn't been as engaged with them as they would like him to be. So in the end, it really does. It starts with having leadership that cares about our small businesses and is willing to listen to them and work with them to find the solutions to the issues that they face.
Awesome. Thank you. And then this question is right back to you. There's been a lot of controversy around this. Do you have any thoughts on what should be done with the 3rd precinct building at the site of Lake and Minnehaha?
Absolutely. We need to rebuild the site. Unfortunately, our council has failed to come together to create an actual plan for public safety and what a system of public safety would look like, as I've said, a year later. As we rebuild, if they would have done the work to come to this to figure out what our public safety system will look like, then I think we could start rebuilding this immediately. Because as we rebuild, the common theme that you've heard over and over, build back better, right? This is an example of that. We should know that what our system of public safety looks like, and then build a site that suits the needs of a more comprehensive system of public safety and community engagement and community service. But so yes, we have to rebuild it. It's just unfortunate that we don't have a clearer picture of what our system will look like so that we can rebuild it accordingly. We can't rebuild it for a system of the past, for a policing system that we have seen as broken. We need to rebuild it for the future. But in order to do that, we need a council that can come together to create what that system looks like first so that we can build the structure around it.
Yusra?
Yes, thank you. If we are to rebuild the 3rd precinct, I think any future investment in building, updating, or replacing police stations should require integration of the community, of community spaces and amenities, such as rooms where residents can hold neighborhood meetings, green space where they can recreate. And I would like it to house safety beyond policing options like mental health workers or social workers, and that be actually a community hub rather than that being a respite for cops per se. So that's what I honestly think should be the case if it is to be rebuilt.
Thank you. And then this question is right back to you. In your view, what are your thoughts? What are the greatest barriers to affordable housing currently in Minneapolis? What will you do to eliminate those barriers?
Yes, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. As someone who was raised in public housing by a single mom, I understand the importance of a safe and stable home. For decades, Minneapolis has suffered from an affordable housing crisis. And for too many families, the rising cost of housing is a major obstacle to upward mobility and stability. We know that the affordable housing crisis disproportionately impacts Black, Indigenous, immigrant and other communities of color, along with members of the LGBT community. So access to quality, affordable housing is crucial for low and middle income families in Minneapolis and throughout our state. The increasing scarcity of affordable housing is a threat to us all, and the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent economic impact has exacerbated this problem. And now we're facing an inevitable mass eviction crisis. So we must continue to invest in public housing production and preservation, advance partnership opportunities with MPHA, Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, expand the number of affordable housing units available for residents below 30% AMI, create additional pathways and support for affordable housing, home ownership, especially for BIPOC residents, and also address homelessness through expanding culturally specific outreach, expanding opioid specific outreach as well, and expanding low barrier housing options for people leaving homelessness, working with jurisdictional partners at the county, state, and federal level on shared approach to addressing a very complex challenge related to housing and housing encampments as well.
Tom.
Great, thank you. So the question was, what is the greatest barrier, correct?
Yes.
Okay, funding is the greatest barrier to affordable housing. Our city can create a dedicated funding stream. We've figured out what the issues are. I think that's the thing, right? We can talk about how big of an issue they are. The biggest issue to answer this question is funding. Our city can create a dedicated funding stream to address affordable housing, which we have not done. It's up and down. I think we've created dedicated funding streams for things in the past. That would be a good start, but we can't do it alone. We need the city, of course, but we also need a more affordable housing from the county, which we've seen a big investment in recently, which is great. And we need to continue with those partnerships at the county. Our city can't do it alone. We also need help from the state level as well. And we also need, for public housing, our city can't afford all on its own to create and continue to, remodel the public housing that drastically needs help without federal dollars. There's federal money, and we need to be able to work with our federal partners to go get that as well. The job of a council member is not only to work in City Hall, but to use their position to work with partners at all of these different levels of government. As somebody who works at the state government and works with federal government elected officials staff, I know that there are opportunities to do that. And we need council members that aren't only at City Hall. What would be great if they would start speaking to each other at City Hall too, and working with each other at City Hall, but also outside of City Hall. And I think that's the largest barrier. We need to work with these intersectional complex systems and make sure that our city is getting what it needs from all of these different levels of government.
Thank you so much. Our next question is, do you support the changing the charter to create a new Department of Public Safety that will include law enforcement and expanded violence prevention efforts, mental health crisis response, housing and addiction support, victim services, and more to address the full safety needs of our city? And I will also put that in the chat.
Great, thank you. I support creating a comprehensive system of public safety in our city. Right, these are all fantastic ideas, right? I think we have ideas, this co-responder unit idea, additional mental health units, creating traffic units that are able to work with traffic assistance and control without escalating situations. We absolutely need to do that as a teacher in the classroom. I wasn't an expert in special education students. I wasn't an expert in English language learner students, but as a general education teacher, I had people around me to help me with that, right? We are going to need a role for traditional police officers as well, which was in the question, but they're going to need that assistance. They're going to need people around them to help them, to guide them, to teach them, so that they can come together to support our community in the ways that they need to be supported. And so, of course, all of those are great ideas. However, the council hasn't actually put together a structure to do that. It's backwards. This is what I talked about earlier with Cam when you wanted me to draw a distinction. You do the work first. You set a budget. You bring in policy experts. You have policy staff. You actually have hearings and you design the system. Right now, they have a rough outline of what this new system of public safety would be. And I like the ideas, but it's backwards. We need to do the work first. And then if we need to adjust the charter to fit the actual work, then we can go to people and convince them and say, here is this new system. This is how it's going to work. We've worked through the problems. We've worked through the issues. We've set an actual budget. We know how much all of this is going to cost. Here it is. And here's how we change the charter in order to fit this new system. Instead, we're saying, let's change the charter. We have an outline and some great ideas, and then just trust us to do the job on the back end. I don't think that that's an acceptable way to run a government. So again, in my heart, yes, we need to do all of these things, but we're doing it backwards.
Yusra.
Yeah, thank you. I do agree that this approach is a bit vague on the end goal, but I do think we need like a holistic approach to solve this issue. And the murder of George Floyd demonstrated once again that our current system of policing does not work. And I'm well aware of our racist past and present justice system. Reimagining public safety to many of us is a matter of life and death, and it needs to be addressed with urgency. And I think we must hold our law enforcement officers to the highest standard. That starts with accountability, appropriate training, demilitarization of our police department, working with our partners to reform the state level law that currently allows for arbitrators to overturn the city's termination action against a bad cop, expand the use of mental health and social services professional to responding to emergency calls such as well-being checks, behavioral health crises, and domestic disturbances. We need to limit the use of crowd control weapons, including irritants and projectiles, increase mandates and opportunities for police training and professional development, including crisis management, racial bias training, de-escalation training tactics, invest in recruiting and advancing and retaining more BIPOC police officers so communities they police, they can look like the communities they police. Institute additional checks on police discipline. And public safety is far more than police response, right? True public safety is ensuring that our communities have the resources and support needed to address critical societal failures, access to affordable housing, food security, clean and reliable transportation, and access to accessible healthcare, including mental health. We need to meet the needs of our constituents in a meaningful, sustainable way. And we need to ensure needs are met with appropriate resources and not just a police response.
Thank you. And Yusra, how will you support the arts in Ward 2 and throughout Minneapolis?
Yes, our city is vibrant and artistic and is well renowned for its theaters. And I'm a big supporter of the arts. And I would like to see cultural, artistic put on display as well from different communities in our city. And honestly, it's one of the things that make Minneapolis great. And I would do anything in my position to advance it, support it, fund it.
Tom.
Great, thank you. Yeah, this is an area where obviously the arts are a vital part of our community. My wife is an amazing artist, but she unfortunately doesn't take the time for herself to do that because of our small children and our busy life. And so I keep encouraging her to get back at it, but I certainly appreciate the arts. As we look to rebuild and revitalize our community and our city, the arts, play a key role. We need a holistic approach to rebuilding, and we're eager to have the arts play a large role in that process. As a council member, I'll work closely with those who are most dedicated to the arts such as the Minneapolis Arts Commission to revitalize our neighborhood. It's an area that hasn't been a key part of my platform, but again, a part of my platform has always been that we need to work together with people who have knowledge beyond our own. And that's what I would plan to do in this area as well. Acknowledge an area where I can grow, and this is one of those areas.
Thank you. And then our last question is, how do you plan to stay connected and accountable to Ward 2 residents if elected? How do you plan to be available, and how will Ward 2 residents be able to reach you? How will Ward 2 residents be able to reach you if English is not their preferred language?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just start by saying, we in this process, this DFL caucus and convention process, we were very careful with COVID. I had a pregnant wife and a newborn, and we didn't know what what COVID would be. So we were really careful. We didn't do much community outreach. But the last couple of weeks, I was fully vaccinated. So we decided to knock on doors outside with masks, of course, but we knocked each and every door. We didn't separate them out. We knocked on each and every door. We talked to the neighbors about the caucus and convention process. We didn't know the race, preferred language, or political affiliation of the individuals who would answer the door, because we're in this together and we need to be able to talk through the issues we're facing. As we reach neighbors who don't speak English, we'll be sure to follow up with them with translators to ensure they're able to give their opinions and able to understand our vision for the future of our city. As a small campaign, we can't possibly expect to have translations ready for all of the content we produce in every possible language. But we will be sure to address language barriers as they'll inevitably arise throughout the course of the campaign. And we'll obviously do our best in every single way that we can. And as we expand post-convention process, we'll be bringing in other people. We'll be expanding the campaign beyond this DFL caucus and convention process. And of course, that'll be a large part of that.
Yes. I believe that a campaign is a reflection of the type of leadership that you will ultimately be when elected. That is why I take great pride in working in the work that my campaign has done to reach out to every corner of the ward. And I will continue to engage residents once elected. And as a former policy aide, someone who worked on constituent needs, I understand that there has to be multiple options of communication, whether it can't just be an email or phone call. You have to have routine conversations and town halls in the ward. Make sure that your door is open to them with from the smallest issue to the largest complex issues that we're facing as a whole. And we have worked hand in hand with the DFL's team to ensure that we lived up to our party's outreach and inclusion statement to the best of our abilities in this unprecedented cycle. We work to bring new and more diverse voices into this endorsement process and into our campaign and into our party. And we've had conversations with voters across Ward 2, from East Como neighborhood where I live to Longfellow to Prospect Park, and we have listened to them. We have met with organizations across the spectrum that align with our DFL values. And as someone from a community that is underrepresented, it is crucial to me to create an open and accessible city council, and I will be an extension of your community at City Hall, essentially. So there has to be various creative ways in which you stay in contact and know what each and every constituent is saying and value their voice, whether you agree with it or not.
Thank you so much. So now we'll do closing statements. Each of you will have 5 minutes to do your closing statement. And you'll start. You're still mute.
Telling you. I want to start off by thanking you all again for putting this together and for taking the time to organize this, especially when it's such a beautiful day outside. I really enjoyed this interaction. I wish we were there in person to interact with everyone. Unfortunately, it's not the case. So thank you for offering this opportunity. Can I ask a question if you don't mind? Is there still time for speeches after this, or?
So we're doing our 5-minute speeches right now. So.
Oh, that's the closing statement?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I should have.
Or Devin.
Or do I close it and then start my speech? Can I do that?
That's a really good question. I think I'm gonna let Devin answer that.
Yeah, just both candidates will get the same amount of time. So
Okay, so I'm gonna start my speech. So thank you, everyone. So that's the case. Good afternoon, Ward 2 DFLers. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for those of you serving our party and our ward. I want to thank our ward delegates as well. My name, like I said earlier, it's Yusra Arab. I'm running to represent all the diverse residents and vibrant communities of Ward 2 on Minneapolis City Council. I'm a mother, an immigrant, a renter in East Como neighborhood, and a veteran policy aide to the Minneapolis City Council, and a proud DFLer. And I'm running to serve our ward on the Minneapolis City Council because our city is at a critical crossroads. We're experiencing some of the most consequential, urgent, and complex challenges in our city's history. We're emerging from a global pandemic that not only worsened, but undid progress we've made on chronic problems, including homelessness, income inequality, education disparities, and much, much more. The murder of George Floyd and the trial of Derek Chauvin have layered trauma on our communities of color at the same time that an uptick in violent crimes has highlighted our needs for more violence prevention and community safety measures. Last spring's civil unrest devastated BIPOC businesses and neighborhoods already struggling from COVID-19 and put Minneapolis at the center of a nation-wide reckoning on policing and race. Today, the nation's eyes remain on Minneapolis in hopes that we race to this moment and lead the path to transformational change. And yet, at this critical moment when our communities are calling for transformational change, the current composition of our city council seems too paralyzed by political grandstanding to answer the call. To the contrary, the tenor of our city council is sowing division where there would be otherwise unity. We need leaders who are ready to meet this moment with collaboration, transparency, and the political will to get things done. I believe that I have that vision, the experience, both professional and lived, and the commitment to do just that. I'd like to share with you a bit about myself. My family fled civil war when I was around 3. We came to America in search of safe, secure future. We found a sense of belonging when we made Minnesota our home. I was raised in public housing by a single mother who earned minimum wage as a janitor at Marshall Fields, supporting the two of us to the best she could. I remember watching my mom work to get by while we waited on a waiting list for a Section 8 housing voucher. And I remember feeling like we've hit the lottery when we finally had that and had a secure, stable, and safe home and one step closer to stability and away from poverty. After graduating Washburn High School, I went on to attain my political science degree and international relations at the University of Minnesota. In my senior year, I had my beautiful daughter, Aisha, who gave me yet another reason to strive for more. I since have gone to attain my master's degree in health and human services from St. Mary's University. I've worked as an organizer, an advocate, striving to collaborate on sustainable solutions to issues facing us. And as a mental health practitioner, working to help those in the Somali community that needed mental health coping mechanisms and lifting the stigma of mental health in my community. 10 years ago, I was unexpectedly diagnosed with lupus, an autoimmune disorder, which prompted me to search for answers for treatment. And that's when I saw the disparities that our communities are facing every single day. The desperate need to reform and expand access to our systems became even clearer. I was compelled to become a leader in my community, and that work led me to Minneapolis City Hall, where I served as a policy aid advisor to the Minneapolis City Council, focusing especially on affordable housing, economic inclusion, and community police relations. Opening the door of City Hall for members of my community and expanding the city's outreach, our community's understanding of our processes and services has been a fulfilling experience for me. It also exposed me firsthand to the best and worst of what our city can offer. That knowledge of what we can do at our best led me to this decision to run for this office. I would like to share with you a bit about yourself. You're the grassroots of our great DFL party. You're the members of our community who for decades and years, or perhaps for the first time, have been agents of change. And in my conversations with hundreds of you, I've learned of the many ways in which you can all work, are all working tirelessly in your communities, in your faith groups, and in your volunteer work. and in your professional lives to foster dialogue, build relationships, and catalyze change around the many challenges we face. Many of you have shared your frustration at the paralyzed city council and frequent prioritization of politics over policy and over people. You've shared your concern about our current government inability to work together in good faith with each other and to work with stakeholders, community members, and forge shared solutions to pressing issues. You also represent—
Thank you, Yusra. We're at time. I appreciate it. Tom, you'll get 6 minutes as well.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. Obviously, I'm Tom Anderson. I'm running to be your next city council member here in Ward 2. In 2006, I moved from northern Minnesota to Minneapolis to pursue my education at the University of Minnesota. 15 years later, as a husband and a father of 2 very sweet little boys, there's no other place we'd rather raise our family. As a first-time candidate for public office, I think it's important that you all get to know who I am as a community member, as a professional, and as a person. So bear with me. Before graduating from the U, I worked for Mayor Ryback's campaign for governor and went out to the 3rd District to try to unseat Eric Paulson. It was the very unfortunate Tea Party wave year, and after losing that election, I finished my degree and was still trying to figure out exactly what my path in life would be. After graduating, I was offered a job managing the Black Sheep Pizza in the North Loop, where I got to do ordering, budgeting, scheduling, and managing staff. My dad and his brother owned and operated a small grocery store in the town where I grew up, so it seemed like a natural fit to be running a small business. After a while, I realized that wasn't my calling in life, but it was a great experience and it solidified my appreciation for what small businesses do to survive and to contribute to the community. So I decided to head back to school to get my master's degree in education, once again at the University of Minnesota. I wanted to make a difference in our community, and what better way than to help kids get an education. My mom was a teacher, and I always admired her for her dedication to her students. I taught for 5 years in public schools. I coached middle school basketball, middle school football, and middle school track. I was also the student council advisor and was elected by my peers to represent them on our union executive committee. During my time as a teacher, I also dedicated my time to my community. As both a board member of the Longfellow Community Council and as a co-chair of the Neighborhood Development and Transportation Committee, where I ran community meetings to give my neighbors a platform to have their voices heard in the neighborhood development process. I also dedicated my time and energy to the SD63 DFL, where I started as a technology officer because it was a new position and I wanted to be helpful however I could. From there, I took over as outreach and inclusion officer, helping organize caucuses and conventions and developing a partner district program to help purple districts elect DFL representatives across the state of Minnesota. 2 years ago, I moved on from teaching and started my current position as Director of Government Relations for Students United, an organization that works for and with Minnesota State University students. Each and every day, I get to work with awesome college students from across the state to help them advance their legislative priorities. Some examples of this work are emergency grant assistance programs, grant programs to reduce hunger on campus, state grant expansion for low-income students to help them afford tuition, and to advocate for issues outside of education that affect our students, like broadband access, and most recently, the Posse Caucus police reform proposals. Federally, I get to work with students to lobby for issues like Pell Grant expansion and policing legislation such as the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. It's a job I love. Getting to work with students to help them learn how to better advocate for the issues they care about and to work on things that will truly make a difference in people's lives. While I love my job, I also love this city, which is why I'm running to represent Ward 2 on the Minneapolis City Council. It's been increasingly clear that the path we're on is unsustainable and we need new leadership and a new path forward. We have intense division and mistrust, exacerbated by elected officials who take to Twitter to attack each other instead of sitting down and working together to find solutions to complex problems that we face. With community-centered, open-minded, responsive leadership in City Hall, I believe that we can tackle the hard issues that our city's facing. I know that we can create a comprehensive system of public safety. We have no shortage of ideas of how we could potentially create a public safety framework. The problem is that these ideas haven't been fully vetted, they haven't had hearings from policy staff and experts, and the council and mayor have yet to have any meaningful dialogue about how they would fund or implement any of the ideas that are proposed. I think we should work together to find better solutions, to have co-responder units, mental health workers, a stronger system of oversight and accountability, and to look into how we can better use traffic control and assistance officers to avoid escalation and violence. These ideas could work, but without constructive dialogue, we'll be forced to continue with the status quo. Disagreement is healthy. It's a normal part of civic engagement, but how we communicate with one another is extremely important. Without civil discourse and discussion, we'll continue to have dysfunctional city government and will only increase the division and distrust that's spread throughout our city. I'm running to represent Ward 2 on the Minneapolis City Council because we need elected officials who are willing to listen with an open mind and who understand that just because someone disagrees, that doesn't make them evil, it makes them human. We have a community of people with big hearts and big ideas, whose backgrounds and identities shape their diverse and often divergent opinions. And that's a good thing, as long as we have leadership who's willing and able to listen, to lead, and to bring our communities together to seek solutions. I truly believe that if we can unite around our shared values, we can overcome the challenges that lie ahead of us. And I'm asking for your support so that we can move our city forward together. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Yusra. Thank you for running. Thank you to the delegates and other interested people for watching today. Thank you, Zainab, for asking questions. Appreciate everyone's time on this hot and muggy Saturday afternoon. Anything else from you, Zainab?
No, thank you guys so much, and thanks for thank you for running and bringing community out. Appreciate it.
Cool. Well, enjoy your day, everyone, and on to the next convention. I'll see you guys later.
All right, bye.
Thank you.